Inside this edition of Bills, this is part one of a three-part series intended to get your mind right before the fast-approaching NFL draft. I want you to be surprised without getting disappointed. Bean might not do what you'd like him to for the Bills, and so hear my voice to help rejoice in the Bills. This is Jeremy Irons. I have been invited here by your host, Nick Shupak, to offer a prologue to today's edition of Bills. I have been invited because I have a tale to tell, a short story that will serve as the broader context into which Nick's story about the 2025 NFL Draft tucks in like a lump of pork into a dumpling. The broader context is life. Capital L, life. You see, I awoke this past Thursday, April 10th, alongside a dim sunrise through a dirty window, hoping and indeed half expecting that spring had sprung. Google informed me, disappointingly, it had not. 39 degrees Fahrenheit on April 10th. 39 degrees Fahrenheit. It was disappointing. Nonetheless, my dog, his name is Reno Gaetano, wagged his tail, thanked me for his breakfast, and followed me outside for our daily morning walk. The breeze was brisk, the day was damp, the clouds were cloudy. April 10th. 39 degrees. Disappointing. As my dog, that is Reno Gaetano, and I entered the park, where he regularly met and played with his friends, and I regularly had my day forcibly begun with stifled pre-coffee conversation with half-strangers, we saw only open grass, heard only birds who might have been surprised that it was 39 degrees on April 10th, but not disappointed. They were alive, joyously active even, and Reno and I shared the park with only them, and some squirrels. Quiet, empty, cold, damp, and all ours. Lovely, peaceful, not disappointing at all. Just surprising. I went to bed after day one of last year's draft, frustrated, angry, confused, disappointed. Xavier Legette was my guy. Well, he was one of my two guys because I wanted Bean to double dip at the obvious position of need, namely wide receiver, following the exodus of Diggs and Davis, with Legette and McConkey. I remember calling into One Bills Live a couple of weeks before the draft and eliciting an unusually bombastic reaction from both Brownie and Mr. Tasker when I proposed my ideal scenario, that, again, of a double dip at receiver that included both Legette and McConkey. When the draft started back up the next morning for round 2 and we were first on the clock, I figured I'd hear McConkey's name, or A.D. Mitchell's. Keon Coleman had been extinguished from my universe of possible selections a month prior. He doesn't separate well. That's what they said. Case closed. Not a Bill. And then he was a Bill. I was frozen in disappointment. Today is April 15th, 2025. 5 days after my golfing buddy Jeremy Irons took Reno Gaetano, who is actually my dog, for a walk on a 39-degree April day. The 2025 draft kicks off in 9 days. I've grown as a football fan, even a football fan, in the past 356 days. started a podcast, written articles, gotten unhealthily active on Twitter, listened to untold numbers of podcasts from the likes of Joe Marino, Matt Perino and Ryan Talbot, Bruce Nolan, Kyle Krabs, the Cover One team of Eric Turner, Anthony Prohaska, Tilt Money, Aaron Quinn, Greg Thompson, and so on and so on. I am going to enter this 2025 NFL draft armed with as much knowledge and as much context as I can in order to be surprised by some unexpected draft selection without being disappointed by it. And since I am a self-licensed football therapist, I'm going to help you prepare to be surprised, maybe even pleasantly surprised, by the Buffalo Bills' upcoming draft selections without being disappointed by them. 39 degrees. April days have their benefits. Yin, yang, two sides to every coin, silver-lined clouds. And since I am a self-licensed football therapist, I'm going to help you get on my level. Since regular listeners to Bills know that I prefer not to bury the lead like an online recipe, even while often burying the lead like an online recipe, let me cut to the chase. This is me cutting to the chase. I did 4 mock drafts. And even though I previously declared that I would do no more mock drafts, these 4 mock drafts I recently executed are of a unique enough variety that I don't count them towards my overriding mock draft quota. These 4 mock drafts are designed to help you and me, help us really, prepare to be surprised without being disappointed throughout this 2025 NFL draft. Did I mention that I'm a self-licensed football therapist? And so, what I call the 4 surprise mock drafts. Mock Draft 1 sees the Bills trade up with the Vikings to use their 24th pick on Mykel Williams, the impressively long run-stuffing defensive end out of Georgia. With their subsequent picks, the Bills select Nick Emenwari, Joshua Farmer, Noel Williams, Logan Brown, offensive lineman out of Kansas, Kyle Monangai, running back from Rutgers, and Teddy Buchanan, linebacker from Cal. We're going to do a musical interlude in a bit, and then I'll come back and give you details as to why the picks I just mentioned were made, and the picks I'm about to mention were made, and why they may well carry with them the element of surprise, but certainly ought not to disappoint you. But first, the other 3 mock drafts in the surprise mock draft series. In mock draft 2, we stuck at 30 and reached a little bit for Landon Jackson, another long, hyper-athletic run-stuffing defensive end. Then we drafted Demetrius Knight Jr., linebacker from South Carolina, Dorian Strong, Jamari Caldwell, Craig Woodson, safety out of Cal, Cody Simon, a double dip at linebacker, and Za Frazier, crazy athletic cornerback out of Texas, San Antonio. In mock draft 3, we traded back just a little bit, and with Cleveland's 33rd pick, we took Nick Scorton, then Jalen Royals, then Pooh Paul, then Jacob Parrish, then double-dipped at cornerback with the selection of Noel Williams, then drafted our first and only defensive tackle, Cam Horsley, out of Boston College, and finally, one of my draft crushes, Caleb Ransaw, cornerback / nickelback / safety hybrid out of Tulane. Our 4th surprise mock draft saw us trade all the way back.
I'd like to go way back now
to the 42nd pick and choose Princely Umenmielen. Seeing a theme here with our top picks? I am. A true pass rusher with all of the physical tools, the height, the speed, the bend, to project as a difference maker early in his career with a ceiling to expect great things as he evolves as a pro. After Umenmielen, we selected Andrew Makuba, and then, ready to be surprised, Tate Ratledge, a guard, an offensive lineman out of Georgia with the 62nd pick. Then Dorian Strong, then Harold Fannin Jr., tight end out of Bowling Green, then Shamari Caldwell, there's our defensive tackle, then Trevor Etienne, running back out of Georgia, J.J. Pegues, another defensive tackle for y'all, and finally, Dante Thornton Jr., a wide receiver out of Tennessee. As we hurl our way into a brief musical interlude, do me a favor, would ya? My name is Nick. I call myself Nick from New York. I'm a self-licensed football therapist. The name of this show is the Bills Pod. My Twitter handle is @TheBillsPod. Hell of a handle, isn't it? Go follow me. This entire episode is going to be interpreted as a visually appealing series of Twitter threads that is tailor-made for Twitter arguments. Please go follow me on Twitter @TheBillsPod. Amazing handle. My name is Nick. Nick from New York. I'm a self-licensed football therapist, and this is your musical interlude. Mock Draft 1 for today is called the Trade Up Draft because we watched, like an eyes wide open emoji, as Brandon Beane traded up to Minnesota's 24th pick, saw Derek Harmon on the board, and then selected Mykel Williams. We need a defensive tackle to help in the run game. Harmon or bust. Two-gap stuffing Ted Washington, Kenneth Grant, Warren Sapp hybrid, or move the team to Toronto. We need to get faster at defense. We need for speed. That is for what the rabble might be calling. But Brandon Beane's marching drum may be playing a different beat. Brandon Beane might look at advanced metrics or even simple metrics and say, yeah, we need to do better in the run game, but there's a number of ways to skin that cat. And he's not wrong. Surprise, surprise. A big old defensive tackle seems like the straightest line between a mediocre run defense and a good run defense, but it isn't the only line. If Mykel Williams slips all the way to the 20s, he's the best player available, bar none. And while I would be a little surprised to see Brandon Beane forego a potential game wrecker on the interior in Derek Harmon, Harmon is not an unflawed prospect. Harmon had a 26.7 missed tackle percentage in 2024. That is, no other way to slice it, bad. Perhaps there isn't as much utility in a defensive tackle who has trouble tackling than many in Bills Mafia would hope. How many fewer yards does Derrick Henry gain if he's running through tackles Harmon might fail to make? And so, while I would be neither surprised nor disappointed if we selected Derek Harmon at 30, I think he's potentially terrific, and I'm not here to crap on him by shining a light on his seemingly one flaw. With the opportunity to match Gregory Rousseau's 83-inch wingspan and elite run-stuffing abilities with Mykel Williams' 83-inch wingspan and elite run-stuffing abilities, I would equally be neither surprised nor disappointed if Brandon Beane just can't resist. And when we consider that Williams played most of the 2024 campaign on a busted ankle, we can digest his 16.7% missed tackle rate more easily and incorporate the fact that he doesn't turn 21 until this June to convert our surprise into excitement. We're going to be mad to have an elite length and run-stuffing ability on the edges of the defensive line? Should we be disappointed if Michael Williams, who many pundits believe is a top 10 talent, falls into the 20s and Bean jumps at the opportunity to get him? Compare the surprising feeling of the Bills trading up to get Williams, who is a defensive end and not a defensive tackle, to the feeling of seeing Williams get drafted by the Chiefs or drafted by the Eagles. I can't speak for you, but I can guess what you're feeling based upon my own probably not too unique reaction, that I'd feel like we, or some collection of teams drafting between picks 8 and 30, gift-wrapped that selection of Michael Williams to the goddamn Chiefs or the motherfucking Eagles. Now that we've got Michael Williams on the roster, we must select a defensive tackle with our next pick, right? Prepare to be surprised, but no need to be disappointed, because we're taking who might be the best overall athlete in the draft this side of Travis Hunter, and that's Nick Emenwari, the big, fast, quick, long, tall, exciting safety out of South Carolina. After his perfect 10 RAS coming out of the combine, the first strong safety to record a perfect 10 RAS out of 1,079 strong safeties going back to 1987, the only question, and it is a big one, admittedly, with Emenwari is, can he be your post safety? Does he have the instincts? Joe Marino sure has his doubts about Emenwari's football IQ, about his processing speed. Bruce Nolan's most recent episode, entitled This or That, explicates in terrific detail how Prospect X may be good at doing thing A, while Prospect Y may be good at doing thing B, and thus requiring complements across the roster to fill in what Prospects X and Y might be lacking. So it wouldn't be crazy to have concerns about a secondary that includes two players in Emenwari and Bishop who might have their processing deficiencies, at least as of today, April 15th, 2025. But if Sean McDermott assures Brandon Beane that he can coach up Emenwari to be a more reactive player, if Sean McDermott assures Brandon Beane that he, Sean McDermott, the safety whisperer, can teach Nick Emenwari to see something and do something, then both Sean McDermott and Brandon Beane have my vote to select Nick Emenwari. How could you take a defensive end and a safety with your first two picks when we need a run-stuffing defensive tackle and a cornerback? I'd rather watch the Sabres! Well, Brandon Beane might tell you, if our opponents can't run off tackle because of Michael Williams and Greg Rousseau being over either tackle, and if Nick Emenwari simultaneously enables Cole Bishop to move into the box where he's most comfortable and most needed, and also offers improved run support himself, then our opponents don't have much choice to run almost exclusively up the gut, right? Well, now that we know what our opponents are going to do, let's just scheme stuff up the right way. And anyway, rabble, don't fret too much, because we've been talking every day to a kid named Josh Farmer, a defensive tackle out of Florida State. And here's our third pick in this draft. After the mock selections of Michael Williams and Nick Emenwari caused shockwaves of surprise throughout Bills Mafia writ large, the universal temperature of Bills Mafia fans from Irondequoit to Fredonia can feel their mutual nerves calm as Josh Farmer is selected to man the defensive interior, and then Noel Williams is selected to become CB2. Don't let their PFF projected draft positions fool you. Either, both, Josh and Williams, Farmer and Williams, that is, are absolute dogs with high ceilings. Either one shows respective full and clear potential to be a solid pro, to be a plus starter, or to be a Pro Bowl or all-pro level game breaker. Josh Farmer and Noel Williams are excellent prospects who would both be projected to go a round or two higher than they're currently projected, were it not for the fact that both the defensive tackle and cornerback draft classes run deep with talent this year. The next pick could make you gasp, but again, the exercise here is to prepare to be surprised without getting disappointed. And this being the Bills' 5th pick in this here mock draft is going to be far less surprising than a much earlier pick I'm going to lay out for you in another mock draft. So hold on to your butts.
Hold on to your butts.
But don't feel the need to hold too tightly because you'll need your strength for the future mock draft I just mentioned. With pick 152 in this mock draft, the Bills are selecting Logan Brown, tackle out of Kansas. The offensive line class in this 2025 draft class is considered a weak one. Logan Brown has kind of narrow hips and kind of a little butt for my taste, but a 9.49 RAS, a 4.51 shuttle. The Bills have had remarkably good fortune with regards to health of their offensive line for several concurrent seasons. Bean has shown, and nevertheless, a continuous intent to keep the OL shelves stocked with burgeoning talent. Staying a step ahead is often a hallmark of successful management, be it in football or any other vertical. Be prepared for the Bills to select an offensive lineman in this draft. If Bean is comfortable with a high-ceiling development guy like Logan Brown, then day 3 is when that lineman might get picked. But if Bean looks into his crystal ball and sees looming contract extensions / negotiations with Osiris Torrance, Alec Anderson, and David Edwards prior to the 2026 season, he wouldn't be insane for stocking a prospect like Logan Brown next to Tylen Grable on that offensive line depth chart shelf. You can be surprised, but don't get disappointed. After Logan Brown, we've selected Kyle Monangai out of Rutgers. If you were hoping for a lean, pass-catching, game-breaking 4-4 talent like James Cook, well, yet again, you're going to be surprised. But Monangai won't disappoint you, because in Monangai, you'll be witnessing a relentless sequence of right-trigger hit sticks with every single run. This is a Marshawn Lynch sort of player who will hit opponents
over and 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 over again.
And finally, this mock draft, the one in which we saw Bean trade up 6 spots for Mykel Williams, we watch him select Teddy Buchanan, a linebacker out of Cal, who is one of these chiseled from marble, shot out of a cannon, total Dorian Williams-like prospects. I love Dorian Williams. I won't go into detail why, but since you're tuned into this edition of Bills, I can safely profile you as the sort of plugged-in Bills fan who already knows why. But Dorian Williams' contract is up after the 2026 season, and so Bean might want a potential replacement in the depth chart, learning the system ahead of time. And so, despite neither defensive tackle nor cornerback being taken with the first 2 picks in this draft, what do we think? We got Mykel Williams, Nick Emenwari, Josh Farmer, Noel Williams, Logan Brown, Kyle Monangai, and Teddy Buchanan. Think our run defense has improved? Think we'll be better against the pass? Think we got faster on defense? Did we land a potential CB2? Did we draft a high-floor, high-ceiling defensive tackle? Yep, and yep. Plus, we added bodies in position rooms where contract negotiations are soon to be arising. And so, played the board pretty darn responsibly. You surprised? Good. just as long as you're not disappointed, or at least on your way to preparing to be surprised without getting disappointed. Now we're simpatico. Now we're working towards a useful goal. And since this edition of Bills has run about as long as I'd like any edition of Bills to run, we're going to call it a day. And we're going to pick up the next edition of Bills with Mock Draft 2 in this series. And that's the mock draft where Brandon Bean stuck at 30 and then reached a little bit for Landon Jackson. Surprised? Good. Because as a self-licensed football therapist, I can tell you, I got you just where I want you. And so, until next time, should you see me on the street wearing a Bills hat, because I'm always wearing a Bills hat, raise a fist in the air and say, "Go Bills." And I will raise my fist in the air and also say, "Go Bills, go Bills, go Bills, Bills, Bills."